That is super cool. Let me turn these down before I forget. I don't want to be that guy.
Good afternoon, Florida neighbors. First of all, I want to say what an honor and privilege it is that you would choose this presentation to check your emails and your text messages and your social media pages and all that stuff. Public shopping by one day one. But no, seriously, it's an honor that you would come into this room at this time of day. I know that a lot of you are tired. I really appreciate it. I would say it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood today, that's for sure. Beautiful hotel, beautiful people. This has been a beautiful experience. So I'm really glad that they accepted the invitation from me. You guys in the back are going to be super happy because you won't see me shaking all over the place. These people in the front will have to worry about that. So let's have a little fun today. Let's have a little wonder. This presentation is a lot about fun and wonder. Something that can be the reason why I want to talk to you today about it. So I would say that this is either going to be a home run or a strikeout, but hell, I'm going to swing away. Because I'm not promised another presentation after today. This might be the very last one I ever give. So I'm going to give you everything I got. So now is the time you realize you're in the wrong room, if you see the title. So the title of this presentation is The Art of War and the Greatest War itself. Mind, Body, and Spirit. So my name is Dr. Salvatore Alvarico. I just go by Dr. Sal. My mom and my wife, it still feels really weird to say doctor. My mom and my wife, they tell me all the time, hey, you worked hard for this, so I go ahead and use it. It's still super awkward. But apparently there's research that says by using that title, you become smarter than I am, so I'm definitely going to use it. I'm not that smart. There's a lot of help and support with this presentation. This is about a year-long project. And there's a lot of reasons why I shouldn't even be here today. And I won't go into that stuff because there's other things that maybe we wish would have happened. But this is a special moment for you to be here today. Particularly with my family. My wife is here today. If you could raise your hand. She's helped me a lot with this. She's only listened to this BS for about a year, so she's heard this over and over and over. My brother, who inspired me with this presentation, he came back from last year's presentation, and we had a good conversation, and I was looking for something to do. And because of my brother, I was inspired to do this presentation. See, that's what I already think. His wife also helped, so you got 3 Alvaricos plus me. I also had colleagues help me tremendously with this. They set some presentations, they gave me advice on that stuff. I work at the VA, but I'm not here on behalf of them in any way. I'm here on behalf of myself. Look, I know there's going to be a lot of questions today. I get it. I've been working on this for over a year, and I got more questions for you, so that's where I am. So what I would ask you is just hold your questions to the end. What I'll do is I'll stand off to the side. If you want to talk to me, that's fine. There's a vibe I'm looking for, and I'm afraid that if we get off into questions, we'll take off what I really want to try to do today. And so, by the way, if somebody comes in late and you see them raise their hand, just smack it down real quick. Just be like, no, don't do that. Whenever I work on something, I always think about the words of Socrates. He said, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. So let me make it very clear today. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. All right, you just ask my wife. Okay, you can talk to her later. You already saw her hand go up. She'll tell you. My family will tell you the exact same thing. I'm kind of what did we say, honey? I'm an idiotic savant or something like that. I say the stupidest stuff sometimes, and it sounds really interesting. All I'm doing today is I'm sharing something with you. This isn't a presentation for me. This is a gift. And the way that a gift works is you can take it and you don't have to. I mean, it's up to you. But this isn't a presentation for me. This is a gift. This is something that's touched me deeply and personally. It's helped me remind me to be passionate. It's inspired me to alter my creativity, perception, and language. It's helping me better understand my clients hindsight, I'm going to be looking at a lot of this presentation because my social phobia is going to be kicking in really heavy here in a minute. So I'm going to try to look this way a lot as much as I can. So changing people is not my goal here today. I just want to make that very clear. I'm anti-proselytizing. That doesn't mean I don't have opinions, and I'm very open to sharing my opinions, but I'm not trying to change you. Okay? I just want to share some things that have significantly impacted me. Socrates once said, "I cannot teach anybody anything. I can only make them think." That's what all these presentations should be about. Galileo said, "You cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself." And if that's not the message today, I don't know what it is. And lastly, Mr. Fred McFeely Rogers. Everybody know Mr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers' neighborhood? A great psychological mind of our lifetime. You should explore into his wisdom about what he was doing. His work was psychology. It wasn't about a child show. It's about psychology. You should look into it. He once said, "Attitudes are taught, they are not taught." So the mission of the presentation today: have courage to confront and challenge yourself in order to help others do the same, or as we might say in the military, lead from the front, not from the rear. A personal motto of mine: if you don't have within, you'll always be without. And that's something I struggle with every day, but I'm trying. It's my own personal war. Now, when it comes to presentations, I love the words from Confucius, and I want this to really kind of dig in deep today. Confucius said, "I hear and I forget." Right now, by the end of this presentation, 95 or 99% of what I say you're going to forget. Maybe that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. We'll find out at the end. Then he said, "I see and I remember." So what I'm trying to do is I'm going to try to give you some stuff. I'm going to try to give you some passion. And hopefully you remember a little bit about that. But he ends with, "I do and I understand." The only way you really get this, okay, is you've got to pick up the book yourself and you've got to read it from the mindset I'm asking you to read from. Not as a warrior, but as a therapist, as a mental health professional, or whatever your job is, CEO, CFO, it doesn't matter. The art of war applies to everyone. So, an outline. Now, the art of war is often called 13 chapters, so in honor of that, I just put 5 chapters. Chapter 1, we'll go with why could this topic be important, my journey to it. Chapter 2, the era, the culture, the philosophical depth of the writings. Chapter 3, the art of war, the self. The art of war, chapter 4, the art of war therapy. Chapter 5, the art of war, now what do you do with that information? Now, there's a ton of objectives, but I'm not going to stay here very long. There's a lot of them, just know there's objectives. So chapter 1, the why. So let me give you a little bit of information about me, just to start, so you know who I am. So I'm not only a veteran myself, I was a paralegal in Sicilian Jack. I was responsible for an infantry unit. If you know much about the military, then you know anything in an infantry unit is a show. I did 2 deployments for Iraq. My first one was during the surge, and the second one was during what we would call the closure period of time when we were getting out of Iraq. I come from a military family. You can see a bunch of pictures here. So right here at the bottom is my mom and my dad. They both served in the Navy. As a matter of fact, if they hadn't met 2 people from completely different parts of the state, if they hadn't met in the Navy, I wouldn't be alive today, and neither would my brother, and neither would my older brother. So that's how special the Army, the military, not the Army, sorry, the military is to me. So my grandfather both served. My mom's dad served in World War II, and my dad's dad served in the Korean War. I've had a lot of uncles serve, some in Vietnam, some in peacetime. I've had a lot of cousins serve. My brother has served. That's me and my brother there at the top. My brother was in the Marines. I was in the Army. This is kind of a dark aspect, but pictures like that, when you get in early in the military, those are basically called death pictures. Because if you die in Iraq or Afghanistan or something like that, those are the pictures they're going to put in the newspapers or to your family. But you see, the far picture to the right is me during my second deployment to Iraq. I was raised in, near, and around military bases and military culture my whole life, in one way or another. I graduated with PsyD in clinical psychology with a military emphasis. The reason why I went to the school was because it was the only one in the nation at the time doing this. So I always knew where I wanted to go with the psychology aspect. I have a master's and a bachelor's in psychology. For over a decade, more than a decade, since I got out of the military, I've worked with and still work with the military population, active duty Reserve Guard, veterans, and their families, and various veteran organizations, so mental health or community engagement related. In all this time and all the work that I've done, I found one word consistently comes up in the work that I do with the veteran population and the military population: the word war. And used in other ways too: battle, struggle, wrestle, you name it, whatever, but consistently, war. Every single client has come into therapy searching for peace. Every single one. So war has been on my mind a lot lately, and I'm sure it has been with many of you. War between Ukraine and Russia, a potential World War III that could happen. Battle buddies that I have that are still in the military, and they're fearful of that. End of the war in Afghanistan, the end of the war in Iraq, and many of us served because of that, 9/11. The end of the war on terror overall. And how all these things have impacted my clients, my friends, and myself personally. War within our society, between this side or that, this party ideology or that, this faith belief versus that, this neighbor against that neighbor, this group against that. War, 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 war. A society, a species of never-ending war. War has always been and always will be, and what a sad thought to ponder. I've seen war my whole life, in one way or another. I've read about war, my family has been to war. I've been to war, I've survived war. I currently help people who have survived wars or who are trying to survive their current wars with their mental health, suicide ideation, substance use, traumas, relationships, the list goes on and on. And I'm sure you are as well. But I have never actually studied war itself, nor have I ever even looked up the meaning of the word. Real quick, anybody? When was the last time you looked up the word war in the last 30 years? Anybody? There you go. I would say the same thing for love, by the way. We all use that word, but if I had to ask you what the definition was right now, you wouldn't be able to tell me. That's very interesting. We don't even know the definition of the words we use. For years, I thought about reading books like The Art of War, but I never did. Don't be deceived. We are actively at war every day, whether you want to realize it or not. People are literally dying all around us in this war of survival, a world of fear, and we know this a lot in behavioral health. War related to suicide, overdose, drugs, alcohol, various addictions. Driving on the road is incredibly dangerous. Oh my God. Murder, violence, crime, right? Stress, the #1 killer. I think I read something, maybe you haven't heard it as well, that 80 to 90% of all physician visits are like stress related in some way or another. That's how crazy stress is in everybody's life. I think it's hitting my leg, I'll tell you that's what it is. Indifference against others is on the rise, especially technology. Related technology makes it very easy for us to not give a crap about the person we're talking to. Political and religious divides, family relationship wars, right? You may say, what? That's not really a war. Have you been to a family court recently? Oh my God. It's a battle. And not only that, people are committing suicide and they're dying in that struggle. Okay, a lot of violence related to that. You got weather and environments, right? We're in Florida, hurricanes every year. What happened in Hawaii just now, right? There's people dying all over the place just from weather and environments. This list goes on and on and on. This is only a few things. So are we losing the war? Is our field, is our profession losing the war? It's a really good question. We must get over the fear, the stigma associated with the word, concept, or topic like war. The fear, or the avoidance is holding us back from what we need to do, from where we need to go, from what we must understand, challenge, and accept. What is war? Oxford Languages defines war as a noun, a state of armed conflict between different nations or states, or different groups within a nation or state. War is an active noun like struggle. To war with someone or something is to strive to overcome or conquer them or it right here and right now. To endeavor to be victorious or superior over them, over it. So chapter 2, let's go a little bit into the area of the philosophical depth of the book. So in my striving to better understand war, I finally read The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu opens up his book and he says, the art of war is of vital importance to the state. It is a matter of life and death, a road to either safety or to ruin. Since it is the subject of inquiry which can, on no account, be neglected. Understanding the art of war is vital to life and death, in our field, in our profession, but most importantly, within ourselves, our own state. So it's difficult to understand exactly when the art of war was written. They believe maybe 500 to 200 BC, okay? But it appears to be influenced by Taoism and Confucianism. Now you have to understand that those two ways of seeing things were rising up during that time. So there's a lot going on in this region of the world. It's actually a very cool time in history if you do your research. You got Hinduism, which is one of the oldest religions on the planet, kind of spreading over into the Asian area. And then you have Confucianism and Taoism kind of spreading up at the exact same time that Sun Tzu is writing things. You've also got Buddhism that will start to spread immediately around this time as well. You've got things like Alexander the Great going around the world during this period of time. You've got the Roman Empire really starting to get going. You got Socrates, you got Plato, you got all this stuff going. They're only like a 6-month walk from where Sun Tzu would have been. You got trade, all this stuff. So if you're a history buff, then you know that there's information being carried through trade. So I heard a really good way of breaking down the difference between Taoism and Confucianism, and again, these are incorporated in one way or another in the art of war. Is Taoism is a philosophy of the people, okay, the individual, and Confucianism is a philosophy of the state, the community. One of the main ideas of Taoism is the belief that balancing forces of the yin and yang. The art of war, when you read it, when you understand it, it is interpersonal and it is intrapersonal. It is individual and it is social. It is physical and it is transcendent. It is violence and it is non-violence. The art of war is the art of simplicity. It's only 13 chapters, approximately 10,000 words. Right now, I don't know if you're going to leave or drive or back to your hotel room. If you went to YouTube and you wanted to listen to the audio, you'd be done listening to it in just over an hour and 30 minutes. That's how short the art of war was. I'm pretty sure that's why I never read it in the first place, because I thought it was going to be some massive book. It's not. You can have it read in one day or one week, and that's how short it is. It has been applied to various disciplines around the world: business, legal, martial arts, sports, finance, politics, whatever, you name it. It's more like beautiful and simplistic poetry than a field manual or strategy book. There's a book called On War by the Persian general Karwan Khosrow. He lived in the late 17th and early 1800s. His book is referred to as the Western equivalent to the art of war. And he once stated that the strength of any strategy lies in its simplicity. Now look at the book On War. That's nearly 200,000 words. So 10,000, 200,000. Who was more simplistic in their argument for how to confront war? The art of war isn't really about others. I think a lot of people would assume that. It's about the self. What are you doing or going to do in war? You are the reason for your own success or failure. No one else but you, the reader. Will you do it alone, or will you incorporate others? Chapter 3 is self. I don't know if anybody knows Alfred Adler. You should. Alfred Adler is considered one of the founders of modern-day psychology. He's the guy that most people forget. We remember Freud, and we remember Jung. And I know this is going to be controversial, but those two guys kind of stole a lot of good stuff from Adler because he died earlier than that. That's fair enough. Who cares? But he had a great quote: "All problems are interpersonal problems." And the more I thought about that over the years, I can't agree more. Especially when you think about heritage and over time. It's all interpersonal. It all started somewhere. But I would add, after reading The Art of War, that I feel that all problems are interpersonal and intrapersonal problems. So what is the greatest war that we will ever face, that we must all face? It's the self. And there's 3 constant factors to the self. There's the mind, which in the field of mental health, psychology, behavioral health, right? That's our #1 concern a lot of times. Then there's the body. If you've never read the book Focusing, you should. It's a great book that really talks about the body. Who's ever read the book Focusing? Oh man, you guys gotta read it, okay? It can be a little dry at times, but it's a fantastic book. It talks specifically about how this element of the body plays a role in your everyday being. And then there's the soul, there's the spirit, right? Look, there's thousands of religions. I'm not going to try to proselytize into one or the other. There's thousands. Pick one. deep dive into it, and you'll better understand where this part of your being can be incorporated to your success. Depression, anxiety, PTSD, or whatever the diagnosis is just a sideshow, a symptom, I'm arguing basically when I say this. The war with self is the main show, the main act. It's the cause. Do we treat the symptom? Do we treat the cause? Sun Tzu said, again early in the book, the art of war then is governed by 5 constant factors to be taken into account in one's deliberation when seeking to determine the conditions obtaining in the field. What's that saying? Before you go into the office for your session, before you go into office for work, before you go into whatever activity you need to accomplish in the day, these 5 things should be on your mind the whole time. Number 1, the moral law. He puts it at number 1, the moral law. Then you have heaven and earth. Basically, what is that? It's the physical. It's weather. It's the conditions. It's the time of day. It's the physical stuff. Then you've got the commander. And then you've got the method and discipline. And so if I break this down, in my opinion, in mind, body, and soul, I see the moral law as being the spirit, the soul. I see the heaven and the earth, the body, the physical. I see the commander as the mind. And I see method and discipline as mind and body. Now, when you read this, you can see that they're all that way, and I would agree. But for this presentation, since it's mine, this is how I'm breaking them down. We can collab on the next one if you want to break it down. So let me give you some quick thoughts about moral law, okay? So Sun Tzu listed this as number 1, so that means it's important. If you leave here today with one thing, that's the topic of moral law. Without a moral law, there is no reason, no purpose, no focus, no goal, no belongingness, no faith, no energy. It's the mission, the reason, the purpose. Think about something like moral entry and how that might occur. It's when the individual has violated their own moral law, when they became the monster, the enemy that they thought they were fighting against. There would be some examples might be, I would become my mother or father, whether it's substance use or neglect or abuse. Oh crap, I became me. How many times in therapy have I seen that over and over to anybody else? I would never kill someone or violate someone like that any person or group did, particularly in the military. Oh crap, I did. I became that person. I didn't realize I could kill somebody. Examples of moral law in the military. So the environment and culture. I gave 3 basically here. So don't let the flag drop to the ground. Never leave the fallen comrade. Tomb of the unknown soldier. If you never explored the guards at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, you should. What they've got to do on a daily basis is tough. Even through hurricanes, they don't quit. That's a moral law. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to share one with you specifically. And I'm going to read it because I want to make sure I don't try to get too emotional when I try to summarize it. So let me set this up for you. There's a nice little picture over there to the right, okay? So early on, let's say early on in American history, flags maybe weren't necessarily that big of a deal. But around the Civil War, flags become a big deal, okay? Particularly because they're meant as a way to insult your enemy. One of the great stories during the Civil War was the Confederates had a party or a celebration or something like that, and they put a bunch of American flags on the ground and they just danced on them and stomped on them. It was meant as a sign of disrespect. And whenever you were a flag bearer on the field, so it's one person, anybody know what a flag bearer is? There's one person carrying a flag. You got nothing but the flag. That's how heavy it is. What they would do, and this is Confederates or Unions, it didn't matter. You'd have 100 or 1,000 people aiming at this one person trying to knock it down because that was credit. Like, I took out that flag bearer. So that's a hard job, okay? Just so you know what a flag bearer is and then what it means now during this period of time, why a flag is important during this period of time. Because it's meant as an insult. It's meant as a jab. So let me read this story to you so that you can understand a little bit about the moral law like that. Perhaps the most dramatic incident of a wounded flag bearer is the story of Sergeant William H. Harney of the famed 54th Massachusetts Colored Infantry Regiment, chronicled in a 1989 movie called Glory. If you've never seen it, it's a great movie. When the original color guard carrying the U.S. flag was killed, Sergeant Harney retrieved the U.S. flag from the ground and continued to march forward toward the enemy under heavy enemy fire. Now, let me just break this down for you. We just talked about how you know if you pick up that flag, everybody's done it for you, right? That's no small feat to drop your gun and pick up the flag. That's a big deal, okay? If it was me, I don't know about what I serve. I don't know if I'm doing it. I might be like, hey, Carl, flag, pick up the flag. I don't know how you would feel, but if I knew that they were coming at me. Sergeant Carney was severely wounded multiple times during the attack on Fort Wagner. The 54th was driven back in retreat, but Sergeant Carney, although wounded, continued to carry the flag and refused to let it go or drop to the ground. As the regiment withdrew, a member of the also retreating 100 New York Infantry Regiment, seeing Sergeant Carney's multiple wounds, offered to carry the flag forward. But Sergeant Carney refused, saying that no one but a member of the 54th should carry the colors. Struggling back to the Union lines, often crawling back, Sergeant Carney was wounded again and again, but continued to carry the national colors, refusing to let them fall to the ground, with all the energy and all the life he could muster and possess. When Sergeant Carney finally carried the flag behind the safety of the Union lines, he collapsed, as the other members of the 54th grabbed the flag from him. Sergeant Carney's words, as he at last handed off the flag to his battle buddies: "Boys, I only did my duty." The flag never touched the ground. For this heroism, Sergeant Carney became the first African American to receive the Medal of Honor in American history. He was born a slave, but escaped when he was very young. He was going to be a minister. But he later said, "I can best serve my country and my God by helping my country and the oppressed." That's a moral law from a military cultural standpoint. When you finally and truly found a moral law in your life, no one can take it from you except yourself. 1,000 people could shoot you, and you won't let it go. That's a moral law. Sun Tzu said, by these 7 considerations, so get 5 before you take the field, okay? Now he talks about the 7 considerations he can forecast victory or defeat, okay? So these 7 things will determine, if I'm thinking about it from a therapeutic standpoint, but this is also life in general, this determines whether you're going to be successful in the therapy or not. Which of the 2 sovereigns is imbued with the moral law? Moral law doesn't have to be a good thing, or as we see it as a good thing, just so you know. ISIS has a moral law. Al-Qaeda has a moral law. Japan had a moral law during World War II, so did Germany. Moral law is moral law. It's neither good nor bad. Who's got more and more law in that therapy room? I work with enough clients to know that they are holding on to theirs. Which of the 2 generals has best ability? You're a general, they're a general. Or they might be way better at holding on to depression and anxiety than you are at treatment. With whom lie the advantages of ride heaven and earth? Man, am I having a bad day? Did I just have a fight with somebody or whatever? I'm not ready for that session. Which army is stronger? On which side is discipline most rigorously enforced? They're probably really good discipline in anxiety, depression, or whatever the issue is, substance use. Which army is stronger? On which side are officers and men more highly trained? And which army is there the greatest consistency of both reward and punishment? And with these 7 things, he says, you can define victory or defeat every single time. If you are going to go to war and you intend to win it, what is absolutely necessary? Oh, did the battery go up? Yep. Oh man, they're trying to kill me on this one. All right, so let's see this goes. So the battery cut off on me. I might need this. What is absolutely necessary? What do these 7 considerations really mean? Commitment. So I'm going to use a football analogy because football season started. Any FSU fans, don't raise your hands. Okay, I do need another mic. Can you check to see if there's another mic right there? Just going to keep on cutting out. Anyway, so I'll use a football analogy. Anybody that knows football, you know tackling drills at the end of the day or beginning of the day. I'm going to keep on going on. You know tackling drills. So you got one guy lined up and another guy lined up. What happens if one of those guys isn't committed to the tackle? He gets run the hell over, okay? That's the same thing with us. If we ain't ready, if we ain't committed, we get run the hell over. So I'm going to tell you a quick story of Sun Tzu and the Women's Army, okay? So I'm going to try to summarize this rather than reading it. This is going to suck. Sorry, the mic. See, this is what happens when you get a 4:30 session. Is that the mic is all cut off. Can you hear me in the back? Way back in Miami? Okay. All right, so let's see if I lose my voice. Okay, so Sun Tzu and the Women's Army, okay? So the king of Wu hears about Sun Tzu. He brings him over. He says, hey, I read your 13 chapters. I got some challenges for you. And of course, you know the king, he's playing games here. Sun Tzu says, bring it on, brother. The king says, hey, you know what? I got a really good challenge. Can you build an army with women? And Sun Tzu says, no problem. My philosophy doesn't change whether it's men or women. So the king of Wu brought out 180 of his concubines. What Sun Tzu did is he divided them into 2 companies and put the favorite concubine of the king on each company. And he described to the women exactly what he was going to do, what he needed them to do, and he said, do you understand? And they all agreed they understood. And then he gave the first orders, left turn. They all laughed at him. They didn't do anything, they just laughed. And I'm sure the king was up there laughing too. So Sun Tzu says, you know what? I didn't explain myself very well, so let me do a better job. And he explained it again. And he said, do you get it? Do you understand what I'm saying? And the women said, yes, we get it. So he gives the orders again. Left turn. They all laugh again. Sun Tzu says, okay, all right. So if the general is given the commands and he's done the proper way of giving the commands, and then the soldiers don't listen to the general, then it's the fault of the officers. And in that moment, he said, the 2 favorite concubines, chop their heads off, kill them. The king, obviously, those are his 2 favorite concubines. He's like, oh, hell no. So he sends down a messenger. He's like, oh, we're good, bro. We're good. We don't need any more training. You know what? I think you passed the test. And Sun Tzu said, nope. You put me in the commitment stage. I'm committed. And he ordered the killing of the 2 concubines. And he immediately put 2 more concubines in their place. No issues. Left, right, front, back. Like a real army. When Sun Tzu was done with them, he sent a message to the king. He said, your troops are good now. They're ready. They'll go through hell and fire for you now. And the king said, I want no part of this. I'm done. I didn't want to be a part of this. And Sun Tzu said, you're a man of words, not a man of action. And in that moment, the king knew, this is the guy that's going to win me wars. Because when the king wasn't committed, the general was. When your clients are committed, you have to be. When I think about the self, how it operates, I think about 3 fundamental stages, okay? I think about the 5 senses. I feel like the 5 senses are the data collection. We know that a lot with trauma care, right? All the different things that happen, all these unconscious things. And then I think about the mind, body, and spirit. And remember, these things are almost never on the same page. It's a miracle to get these things on the same page. Hell, it's a miracle to get 2 of those things on the same page. So that's a different analysis of the data. Okay, so you got basically three different analyses. And then lastly, you got the heart. So the heart is the direction of the solution. Which way are you going to lean? Are you going to be fully committed, partially committed, or are you going to run away from this problem? Commitment is heart. Confucius said, wherever you go, go with your whole heart. Alfred Adler, here he is again. He says, follow your heart, but take your brain with you. Use your common sense. Mind, body, and spirit means nothing without heart. Heart means nothing without mind, body, and spirit. They all join together in this or any war for the greatest success. So chapter 4, let's go into the therapy realm. So when I look at therapy, I see 4 basic battles that are happening. I'm talking about just the individual sessions, okay? You got the battle of the therapist towards the client. You got the battle of the client towards the therapist, and I know you probably have all dealt with people like that. You got the battle of the therapist that they're having within their self, and you got the battle of the client happening within their self. I like the roundabout. I don't think anything more sadistic was ever made in life than a roundabout. Sun Tzu said, victorious warriors win first, and then go to war. Do you know that you've already won before you go into the session? I know that's hard. I didn't say it was easy. While defeated warriors go to war first, and then seek to win. A few questions as we kind of move forward in this area. What is arguably the most important aspect or part of therapy? What is arguably the most important role of the therapist? What is arguably 2 of the most important strategies and tools that we can utilize in therapy? What Sun Tzu might call indirect and direct strategies. Number one, most important part of therapy, rapport. You hear it all the time, right? Therapy alliance, rapport, whatever. I'll tell you something really interesting. In all the years of college and graduate school, I've heard that word over and over again, and I've never heard it explained. It's just randomly used. Rapport. Never heard a definition. Never had an actual semester like a class that delved deep into what rapport really is. And I've read article and article and article over the years about rapport. And I'm sure you can find some that have it in there, but over and over again, I never see a definition of rapport. And one article that I did see a definition of rapport, it was only that highlighted white area. That was it. It wasn't even the whole definition. So the definition of rapport is a close and harmonious relationship, and that's where it stops in research, right there. And I think that's because our field is afraid of the second half of that definition, in which the people or the groups concerned understand each other's feelings and ideas and communicate well. That ain't what I was taught in therapy. I can tell you that right now. So let me give you some quick data. Look, I looked at it a lot. I'm just adding what I thought was important in this conversation. Therapeutic relationship rapport, almost always noted as number one importance in research for clients and outcomes. The way that they've kind of broken it down over time is the common factors for successful outcomes. 40% related to the client factors, okay? 30% related to the therapeutic relationship. 15% related to hope and expectations. Whatever. I'm going to stop right there before I mess it up. 15% related to theoretical and technique, okay? When I read that information and I better understand and I study what those things actually mean, it's 85% rapport right there. It's the dance between you and the client. Even that expectation and hope, that's the dance between you and the client. 85%, 90, let's just call it 90, of the outcomes are the rapport you have with the individual you're working with. How do you see the person in front of you? How do you see your coworkers, your interns, your externs, your students, whatever, it doesn't matter. Do you talk or look differently at people if they were above you versus below you, a boss versus a subordinate? Heck, how do you view yourself for that matter? Sun Tzu saw his troops as family. Sun Tzu said, regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you to the deepest valleys. Look at them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even until death. Maybe be a general to troops, like they were your family, like your family would be upset if you lost them, like you would be upset if you lost them. You say, maybe, Dr. Sal, how should I view my clients? That's a great question. Hell, how should I view anyone for that matter? I don't know. I told you I don't know what I'm talking about from the get-go. Okay, but this is what I believe, okay? And I'm sharing it with you in an effort to strive toward a moral law here. Within myself, that rapport could be or should be something like this. The interaction I'm having with a client or anyone, right then and there, is incredibly special and privileged, and an honor to be in. Why? Because in order for us both to experience that moment, we had to both go through millions and millions of failures and successes for any of this to occur in that moment. If one thing was different in either one of our lives, we don't meet right then, there. You and me don't meet right here, right now. If one thing happened to any one of you or me, this isn't happening. I told you about a year ago, this wasn't on the board. A lot of things happened. That's why I'm here today. This is special for me because I see how special you are in this moment. Look around you. I don't know if you know everybody that you're around, to your front, to your left, to your right, whatever. Whether you know it or not, I've just given you a very special challenge. You will probably never see or meet that person again. Do you take hold of that special moment and you talk to them? Or do you just walk out of this room, sneak out? That's fine. That's up to you. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty powerful thought and perception to have with any person you come in contact in life. That type of perception will change you forever. I didn't have this in the PowerPoint presentation, but for whatever reason, it's been holding heavy on me, so I'm just going to say it. Do you even realize how special you are? Seriously, I'm not talking about metaphorically or some BS, okay? Do you understand how special you are in this room right now? For you to exist, for your DNA to exist, let's talk about science. Thousands of things had to go right for you to exist right now, today, to be alive. Hell, you're lucky to be alive today. There's like 500,000 people that die every single day across the country. Do you realize how special you are? That if one thing changed, if 5,000 years ago, some man or woman didn't meet, you aren't here today. That one connection. That's how special you are. You won the fucking lottery and you don't even know it. Or some of you do. Who are you willing to fight beside or with? In a military culture, maybe we call rapport something like trust. Lieutenant General Harold G. Moore from the movie We Were Soldiers said, "Troops in battle don't fight for what some president says on TV. They don't fight for mom, the flag, or for apple pie. They fight for one another, they fight to stay alive, and they become brothers for life." Like Sun Tzu, Lieutenant General Moore saw his troops as his boys. They saw him as a father figure. There was trust. Would you fight for your clients? Would you fight for yourself? We all know the answer as soon as I ask that question. We generally know when and if somebody has our six or not, whether they've got our back. And your clients, especially military clients, but all your clients will know whether you actually care. You can't fake it. So number two, what's the most important role maybe of a therapist? I would say maybe leadership. Sun Tzu was a servant leader. What is leadership? So it's a set of behaviors used to help people align their collective direction, to execute strategic plans, and to continually renew organizations. And now, the action of leading a group of people or an organization, the state of position of being leaded. I love this quote from John Kenneth. He's a famous economist. He said, "All great leaders have one characteristic in common. It was the willingness to confront unequivocally, wow, the English language, juice. This is what happens when you're nervous. That's a word. I'm going to try to say it. Unequivocally, thank you. I did it. That's my success of the day. The major anxiety of their people and their time. This and not much else is the essence of leadership. Man, if that doesn't sound like therapist and behavioral health, right? When I joined the military, we were taught everyone is a leader. Why? Well, you never know when during the chaos of war or the fog of war, you will need to be the next man up. A few general questions related to the topic of leadership as we move forward. Is our field a good leader? How would you or we know, and would we even admit it? Do you or we really believe in what we are selling here? That's important. We are hope dealers, so to speak. Genuine belief in product is vital. Otherwise, we sell a lie. Remember Mr. Rogers' attitudes are caught, they're not taught. Now, this is what I call the trigger slides, okay? So just hold on, okay? So there's a lot of research out there. I just grabbed some of it, okay? Here's some research related to mental health leadership. We invented this therapy thing for roughly about a century. If you talk about Freud, Jung, Adler, all those, okay? Over 400 different treatment approaches. To over 10,000 books, how-to books on psychotherapy. Endless research and studies, endless. The list goes on. You can never read it all. Research has indicated when they studied clinicians across the country, we're talking about psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, family therapists, all that stuff, okay? No difference between the disciplines, rated themselves in the 80th percentile as far as skill, performance, ability. They didn't talk to me, by the way. I would not have said that about myself. None rated themselves below average. Only 4% considered themselves average. Only 8% rated self lower than the 75th percentile. 25% rated themselves as greater than the 90th percentile, so they almost had a damn near 100% success rate. If you're one of those in here, good for you. I mean, you deserve it. Average clinicians believe that 80% or more of their clients improve from being in therapy with them. 25% of clinicians believe 90% or more, so damn near 100, of their clients improved under their therapy. Studies consistently find over and over that therapists have a well-documented propensity to inflate their effectiveness, ability, and skill. But, this is where it gets triggered, I'm sorry. Mental health field is stagnant. Think of it like a classroom. We still got one teacher, 30 students, and we've been doing that for about 100 years. We still got one person in a room with another person. I mean, yeah, maybe we're not laying back on a couch anymore, maybe we're chairs. We haven't really changed that much if you think about it. Whereas other aspects of the world, particularly athletes, high school students today are breaking records from the Olympics 100 years ago. Things have dramatically changed with other people, but not necessarily in classrooms or therapy. Half of Americans felt seeking mental health was a sign of weakness. Imagine that. Today, half of the people surveyed think that mental health is a weakness. And I hear it all the time in the military culture. No matter how much they pretend that it's getting better, I hear it all the time. 1/3 of adults beginning therapy do not return on the second visit. Imagine that. 1/3, boom, gone. Dropout rates for decades average 30, 50 to 70%, depending on how you define dropout. And guess who gets to define dropout? Us. Not the clients, us. So when you really look at that data and you really realize that dropout is if you define dropout as the client leaves and you guys didn't agree, then we're looking at 70 or 80% dropout rates. It's a lot of research in there. So 50 to 30% of clients report no clear benefits to therapy, 5% reported getting worse. So over 50%, nothing or worse. I don't know about you, that's not a good stat, but we'll go with it. Effectiveness skills does not improve with time. As some might assume, the plateau is usually early in profession. There's been a couple of studies where individuals were followed over 20, 30 years in their profession, and they thought they would be getting better over time as a therapist. No, they plateaued early, and that was it. 80% of the population report doubting the effectiveness of therapy. Imagine that. 50% think it's weakness, and 80% think that it's not effective. So we're not doing something right. 90% stated they prefer talk therapy over med management, but psychotropic drug use has risen each year, while psychotherapy has steadily decreased. Type of modality used only plays about a 10% role in therapy outcomes, but we focus on it a lot. I mean, you can get a lot of training on all the different modalities. We focus a lot on the type of modality. Little has changed in so many decades. So are we good leaders? Still a good question. Are we winning the war? Another great question. Let me put it a simpler way. Some of you are young, so maybe you'll get this analogy. Hey, even the older ones, get on Tinder if you want to. Imagine you go on Tinder. Imagine you go on Tinder and the company comes to you and say, hey, we want you to rate yourself. How do you, from 0, the ugliest thing alive, to 10, the most beautiful thing alive, rate yourself. And you said, you know what? I'm an 8 or a 9. And then they take that information and they study everybody else. They give everybody else your picture. And all those other people say, at best, you're only a 5. At worst, you're a 3. And then Tinder brings you back that information and you look at it and you go, no, that's BS. These millions of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. I'm definitely an 8 or a 9. That's our field. The art of leadership. Clients are the king or queen of their state. They are the expert of their state. You are the general under their state, hired by them, for them, to help them win their wars. You are the expert of war for their state. Another way, they're the team owner, you're the head coach. They can fire you at a second. Are you a servant leader, like Sun Tzu? Great leaders prevent and are cautious against indifference of their self, their troops, and particularly their enemies. Arguably, the greatest leaders understand the art of humility. Nothing loses a battle or a war quicker than pride and arrogance. The art of war is a cautionary, philosophical, poetic message to prevent pride and arrogance, to encourage people into humility, into personal humility. So, number 3, most important strategies and tools that can be utilized in therapy. Indirect and direct strategy. I say number 1 is words. I think that's an obvious. It's an example of both direct and indirect. Now, man, I wish I could do a whole presentation on this book alone. If you never read this one, this is a beautiful book too. This is the Book of the 5 Rings, the strategy of the samurai, probably considered one of the greatest samurais in Japanese history. Hopefully I don't say this wrong. Miyamoto Musashi. He created the school of 2 swords, very unique at his time. Everybody thought he was crazy back then for using 2 swords. He used both the long sword and the short sword simultaneously. Words are often referred to as swords or daggers that cut to the heart or the spirit of us. Two styles of words, words that bring us in close and words that keep us at a distance. Words in therapy are a dance of long sword and short sword. And if you read this book, you understand what I'm talking about, because this is another philosophical approach to life from a warrior perspective. But words mean nothing without action, the right action. You can say all the right stuff in therapy session, but do you actually show it? Number two, humor. Some of you get it right away, some of you are like, nah. Example of direct and indirect strategies, humor. The art of humor. Humor is an assessment tool in all stages of therapy and in life. Humor builds and strengthens rapport, connection. Humor has a powerful impact on the brain and mood. Humor boosts the immune system. Humor is evolutionary. I've seen it argued as pre-language, so survival, defense. Humor confuses the lowest safeguards or barriers during conflict, if done appropriate, obviously. Humor is considered a powerful adaptive defensive mechanism, demonstrates high maturity, and displays high spiritual maturity. Humor helps people feel in control and makes things seem more manageable. Humor helps people release fears, anger, and stress. It helps improve quality of life. Humor is particularly key in the military culture, but it's often seen as dark or dry humor. An example of humor, and we're going with the era of the culture of the time, is the story of the first emperor's court jester, the fool you see in the Great Wall of China. Anybody heard this story before? It's a really funny story, actually. So, the first emperor of China, okay, he's the dude that got all the different areas of China together. He was a bad dude, okay? He'll kill you immediately if he didn't like it. He was not somebody to play with. But he decided that he wanted to build this Great Wall of China to protect his empire. He had this court jester, the fool you see. So the interesting thing about the Great Wall of China was it was a huge thing. Boom! Man, little successes. I'm telling you, my throat is leaking. Might take some water. Anyway, so, but one of the things he wanted to do after he built the wall, while it was being built, he wanted to paint the whole thing. I've heard stories that he wanted to paint it red or something, but he wanted to paint the whole thing. Well, everybody in the kingdom thought it was a stupid idea. Okay, first of all, it's a lot of work, a lot of money, and the amount of slaves it would take. So many people would have to die in order for him to paint the wall. But nobody said anything, because they were afraid that they would be killed by the king. Oh, so, sorry. This man's great. But nobody wanted to say anything. They were afraid they'd be killed, except the Joker. So the Joker relentlessly poked holes at this strategy. And he poked holes so many times that the king finally whipped him. He punished him. And the king threatened him and said, "You're going to paint the whole thing. That's how much I hate you right now." And the court jester, just like any clown would say, he repeated, "I don't think that's a good idea. I'm colorblind." That spread through the whole kingdom, and people laughed about it. And we don't have a painted Great Wall of China because the emperor decided not to do it because he looked like a fool. Humor can do powerful things to people. You probably already know it in your own life. What do you need if you were going to go to war? Well, hell, you need an army. That's an obvious thing, right? Who's in your army? This is a major difference between winning and losing. Remember Sun Tzu in the women army? Who's on your team? Who do you let stay on your team when they laugh at you and they don't listen to you and they don't respect you? You got the wrong army. Your clients have the wrong army. Words or actions? Adaptive social supports, building your own army, right? Studies show that the best of us therapists flourish in supportive communities, what they call cultures of excellence. Good social supports help with health, like diet and exercise, etc. They help reduce and manage stress, the same with depression and anxiety. Help reduce or eliminate substance use or abuse, improve motivation and energy, help set and achieve goals, strengthen the immune system, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Sun Tzu said there are not more. I know. It's 2023. There's more than 5 months. I get it. Okay. Don't hate on Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu said there are no more Yet the combination of these five rise more melodies than can ever be heard. Your army, whatever it may be, will be your musical arrangements in life. More melodies than you will ever know or need. Chapter 5, now what? The greatest war, self. Who are you? Socrates said, know thyself. Sun Tzu warned, know thyself and know thy enemy. Sun Tzu said, if you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. If you know yourself, but not the enemy, for every victory gained, you will also suffer defeat. If you know neither the enemy nor yourself, you will succumb in every battle. Do you know yourself? Do you know your enemy? Sun Tzu said, knowing others is wisdom. Knowing yourself is enlightenment. Some self-exploration challenges. What is your moral law? What is your flag to bear, to hold on to? Will you let it hit the ground? Find something, find anything. Find a moral law for yourself personally. Find a moral law for yourself professionally. What are your ethos, your creed, your values, your tenets, your virtues? What is essential to you? What is essential about you? How can you help your neighbor if you are not trying to help yourself? Imagine somebody's drowning and you can't drown and you jump in to save them, but you can't save them and now you're both gone. Why would you fight for somebody if you don't care? Do you feel that way about yourself right now? Why would your client fight for somebody they don't care about, especially their self? Self-exploration. What's our field of profession? Moral law. Is it to help? What specifically makes our mission special and unique? There's a lot of people that want to help. What I would argue in our field of profession of behavioral mental health, right, is I would say our field of moral law is the never-ending struggle to meld together the mind, body, spirit, and heart, not just for people, but for groups, for society, for ourselves, both intrapersonally and interpersonally, just like the art of the world. Is there any greater moral law that can be found for a job, for a profession, for a leader, for a mission? Is the art of war really about war? Honestly, this is more of a series than a conversation. If I had 90 minutes, I would have felt way better about this. It has taken me 5 months to get this presentation to you at its current state because it's so important, but it's a lot of things. But most importantly, the art of war is actually the art of peace. An ultimate journey and struggle toward the equilibrium between war and peace, the necessity of them both. The art of war is as much about peace as it is about war, a methodology toward equilibrium. But I would say when I read it, I believe when you read it, it's in all things. I feel that the art of war is essentially circumambulating information toward peace. Just like a spiral wishing well you might see it in a mall. I don't know if they still have it anymore. The art of war is as an excellent thing. It can discourage the reader from ever going to war in the first place. As hard as that may be to believe. Warning that war is never ending, heavy financial costs associated, knowing that you will never be able to relax, knowing you will always have spies and deceit around you, knowing you will lose family, friends, neighbors, even potentially yourself. To have one, you must have the other. You want to know peace, you have to know war first. You can't understand the order unless you understand the chaos. War is not a curse. It is an opportunity. It is necessity. It is always inevitable, no matter how much you wish it won't happen. Challenge your perception and avoidance on what war really is, internally and externally. Sun Tzu said, in the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Wars bring out the truth in everyone and everything. You find out the true nature of somebody in the fog of war. More importantly, you find out who you are or who you are not. Over and over and over again, clients have come in search of peace. How can I help somebody find peace from or through their wars when I've never even studied, understood, appreciated, or even accepted war myself? Can I truly understand and know peace if I avoid understanding and knowing war? video real quick, okay? I'm only going to play it once. I really want to play it a couple of times, but I'm only going to play it once. I want you to really listen to what this person is saying. Some of you will know who it is immediately, and I warn you, there's a couple of curse words, but I want you to understand the power of what he's saying. And this is something I've heard from military and veteran clients over and over and over again, in one way or another. I want you to really feel what he's saying. And if you know who he is, then you know how even more powerful what he's saying is. But what I'm going to ask you is you to close your eyes and just look down for a minute, just kind of focus. If you're like me, I'm not closing my eyes. I'm afraid someone's going to steal my wallet. So that's up to you. I want you to feel the pain and share the moment of really honest openness that he's sharing in this moment. And again, I'm only going to play it once to see if it works.
Mike Tyson.
Yeah. If you know his life, you know how powerful what he just said was. And over again, I've heard the same thing from veterans and service members. They know how to be warriors. They know how to kill. I've been trained, right? Scares the shit out of me that sometimes I might be able to get up. I can't control my anger. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not a veteran, okay? I'm the most pacifist person you've ever met. But there's like this fear, right? And through this process, I've heard it over and over again. I miss it. I miss that person I was. How many times have you heard clients say, I miss that person I was? What happened to that person? I want to be that person. Of course, it's not going to work. See, joys and technology. That was just in case the person didn't work. I had it in bed. See, now you actually see the video for all those who don't know the face. So I've talked to you a lot about war, and I apologize. I'm going a couple minutes over. I'm sorry, by the way. I'll give you two simple antidotes for war, in my opinion. Toss a moral wall to bear. Okay? So in order to help balance out war toward peace, first we have to acknowledge there's an imbalance in the first place. If you're not willing to accept that, you can't move forward. So war's up here, it's every day, okay? Peace is way down here, it's very little of it. So second, you have to strive to balance out those things. That means you've got to use peace 1,000 more times than you've used war, just to get that balance. And once you can balance that out, then we can endeavor to understand true equilibrium and success, nirvana, so to speak. So the two ideas that I'm going to present to you are Alfred Adler's the mind shafts of rule, often referred to as community interest. However, if you actually look at the root of those words, you realize that that's an incorrect definition of the word. It's actually a neighborship feeling, which is completely different than community. Neighbor is far more close-knit than community. And then Mr. Fred Rogers' neighborship philosophy. Now again, this was not a child show he was doing. It was preventive mental health. If you study him and you see some of his early work, you'll know exactly that's what he was doing. Both of these individuals, and this is mental health related, two antidotes to mental health related. Both developed and formulated their philosophies during times of severe war and conflict around the globe and at home. Alfred Adler was living in Germany during the rise of Nazism, and that's when he left. Both incorporated psychological, physical, and transcendence, mind, body, and spirit in their philosophies. And both lived it. They didn't talk about it, they lived it. They had a heart. Both had a hyper focus on the person in front of them, right there in any given moment, which is what that thing I was telling you about earlier. Both address the internal and the external wars and struggles that individuals have. Both talk and explore about themselves a lot, but in very different ways. Both express a need of belongingness that we need or that we can provide to others. Now to close this with one last visual. Remember the words of Confucius. You forgot almost everything I already said, and that's fine. So I'm going to leave you with one last visual. What is the art of war? It's when you accept both pillars. The order and the chaos. The war and the peace. That's the art of war. And that's it. I'll stand up here. I appreciate y'all's time.